how we make change happen. And I'm really, really excited for our keynote speaker that came here today. It's so important that we have a voice that really can speak with knowledge and breadth about this subject. And so Renato Mariotti is a former prosecutor and a CNN analyst. He's also the legal affairs columnist for Political Magazine and the host of On Topic podcast. Renato is a progressive activist and a longtime indivisible member who fights for the rule of law and the protections of our elections. Please give me a big welcome for Renato.
Wow. Oh, thank you. Thank you all for coming out when you could be doing other things, right? It's always easy it's easy to honk your horn. We've heard some people doing that. It's easy to click a like or tweet something online, but it takes some real action to get off your butts, to get together, you make your signs, and to come out here and to start doing something. And it takes some real guts to go out there and to call your representatives, even if they don't want to hear what you have to say, like Representative LaHood, for example. But that's what it takes to change things. And what I want to talk to you about as a starting point today is we heard a lot about reading the Mueller report. Like, well, get your representatives to read the Mueller report. We should all read the Mueller report. I will tell you, a lot of people, when I talk to them, are like, oh my God, it's so long. I tried reading it. It's 400 and something pages long. And I thought I would tell all of you about the time I first read the Mueller report and what I saw in it. It was not in the context in which you're reading the Mueller report. I was at the CNN studios, and I had to read this quickly. I was told, read this quickly, you're gonna have to go on the air later today. My editor was saying, you gotta write a column about this, analyze the Mueller report today. So I'm sitting there going through this, and you know what I turned to? I turned to the section on obstruction, because I had read that letter by Attorney General Barr, and I will tell you, by the time the Mueller report was released, I knew he was being deceptive, because there was clearly enough out there to see the guy was working on Trump's behalf. But I thought, there's no way this guy would come out and say that there are difficult questions of law and fact about obstruction of justice if they're not there. And I wanted for myself as a lawyer to see what those difficult questions were. And I was shocked to see that there weren't difficult questions really that were presented for much of the obstructive acts that were there. In fact, what happened was there was a case that was meticulously laid out by Robert Mueller of how the President of the United States had repeatedly obstructed justice. And before we get to anything else, I want to talk to you very, very briefly. I'll just take 2 minutes of your time to tell you what that is, because I want all of you to understand what is in that report, because I know it's hard to see it. There's a lot of pages there. Look, obstruction of justice is when you try to undermine an investigation with the intent to do so. And what did Trump do? Trump literally tried to fire Robert Mueller. And he did that after his own attorney, the White House counsel, told him that if he tried to fire Mueller, he put it in writing, if you try to fire Mueller, they're going to use this as evidence of obstruction of justice. Now, I'll tell you, ladies and gentlemen, if your attorney tells you that if you try to do something, it could be a crime, and you go ahead and do it, that's pretty good evidence that you want to commit a crime, right? It's common sense. Trump knew he was under investigation. In fact, the day before he tried to fire Mueller, he tweeted out that he was under investigation. And what did he do? He called up Don McGahn. He told him that Mueller, quote, had to go. He had to go. And when McGahn didn't follow through, McGahn just blew him off because he knew that would be wrongful. He was an attorney who was not going to get involved in that. Trump called him up again. When is this going to happen? Call me when you're done. Call me when you fired Mueller. Call me back and let me know. And what did McGahn do? McGahn prepared to resign. He told his assistant that he was going to resign, his chief of staff, that he was going to resign. He started telling other people he was going to resign. He wasn't going to do this. Now, McGahn stayed in his job, but just so we're clear, you don't have to be a successful criminal to be a criminal, okay? You can commit a crime unsuccessfully. It happens all the time. I put people in prison for unsuccessfully committing crimes, and that's what Trump did there. The second thing he did is he literally reached out. Don McGahn, his lawyer, had told him that you could not interfere in the FBI investigation, could not contact the DOJ, and he wanted to interfere with Mueller. So what did he do? He called up literally cable news commentator Corey Lewandowski to try to get Corey Lewandowski to get Jeff Sessions, then the Attorney General, to limit and roll back the investigation. I mean, can you believe that? He did it because he knew that if he called Sessions himself, he would violate what his attorneys told him. He thought he was being clever. He told Lewandowski, tell Sessions that Mueller can only investigate future elections, not what happened in 2016. Like, that makes any sense at all. How do you investigate what will happen in the future? I never heard of that in my decade as a federal prosecutor. I'll investigate future crimes. But nonetheless, that's what he said. And he told Lewandowski that if Sessions refused to meet with him to tell to discuss this, to tell Sessions he's fired. Lewandowski tried to contact somebody else about approaching Sessions. He felt uncomfortable with this. He took the written document that he had, where he took notes of what Trump wanted, put it in a safe to keep it because he knew it was important. And then Trump followed up with him. Why haven't you done this? What did Lewandowski do? He went to an aide who was close to Sessions. The aide's like, I am not having anything to do with this, and nothing came of it. Again, why did Trump fail to limit the investigation? Not because he didn't have the power to do it, not because he didn't repeatedly try, but because he was so incompetent that he wasn't able to get it done. Incompetence does not save you from a criminal indictment or a criminal conviction. I put a lot of incompetent criminals in prison. That doesn't save you. And what is the third thing Trump did? Perhaps the worst thing he did is when he realized that all this failed. When the New York Times published an article explaining that he had tried to fire Mueller. When I had written a column at the time saying it's now likely that Mueller will conclude Trump obstructed justice. This is in early 2018. What did Trump do? Trump, first of all, tried to get McGahn to deny this, but he couldn't deny it, and he refused to deny it because it was true. And so then what did Trump do? Trump tried to get him to write a false letter, a false document, documenting a falsehood that he had never been told by Trump to fire Mueller. Trump knew that was false, and he knew that it would ruin him as a witness. If somebody's a witness against you and you get him to write a sheet of paper lying about what you did, of course that your lawyers could use that against him in a criminal trial. It's common sense. We all know it. To McGahn's credit, he refused to do it, and Trump was mad. Trump's like, I didn't say that. And McGahn says, I take notes. I took notes of the conversation. I remember I was there. You told me to fire Mueller. And Trump says, I've had a lot of lawyers like Roy Cohn. They don't take notes. And what did McGahn say? McGahn said, real lawyers take notes. And he's right about that. I'll say that as a real lawyer. So look, all of this together is overwhelming evidence that Trump engaged in a scheme to obstruct justice. There's no question in my mind that if Trump was not the president of the United States, that he would be indicted and convicted for obstructing justice. No doubt in my mind at all. And that is why I wrote with a friend of mine. I wrote a letter, and worked together with a lot of other folks and got over 1,000 former federal prosecutors to sign a statement saying just that. Now, I know a lot of you are thinking to yourself, why are we here? Why are we doing this? Because you've seen the unprecedented stonewalling and obstruction by the Trump administration. I know that for some of you it's disheartening. And the reason I know that is I'm an indivisible member. I go all over the state and I talk to people who are doing what they can. And it can be disheartening, it can be frustrating at times. And I want all of you, when you're thinking about whether any of this is worth it, I want you to think about something that happened this week. Because a Department of Justice lawyer got up in front of a panel of federal judges. I used to be a Justice Department lawyer myself. And she said things that I cannot imagine anyone saying. She said that, literally, that children who didn't have soap, who didn't have a toothbrush, who didn't have a bed to sleep on, were not subjected to unsanitary conditions. How could anybody say that with a straight face to anyone, much less to federal judges, a lawyer who has a responsibility not to make a false statement, who has ethical obligations? It's disgraceful. But the bottom line is the stakes here are as high as possible. And it's going to be very easy for all of us to go and watch the latest movie, to go out drinking with our friends, not only in the months to come, but in the year ahead to come, as there's elections for House and for president and things like that. But for Christ's sake, you don't want to look back years from now, a decade from now, and look back and say, I could have done more. I could have done more. I will tell you, when I was a young man, and I was in law school, I was at Yale Law School, and I saw the election results from Florida, and that George W. Bush won by 600 some votes in Florida. I thought to myself, if I took a few weeks off, I could have convinced 600 people to change their mind. Maybe I could, maybe I couldn't, but the point is, you never want to do that. So what does this mean? We have to get off our asses in the weeks and month and year to come. Call your representatives, call Darren LaHood, call Boss, call these guys and tell them they should read the Mueller report. They should take action. They should take action to hold this president accountable, period. And not only that, you can defeat some of these people in elections. There's no question in my mind that Rodney Davis can be defeated. He almost was defeated last time. There's a lot of work to be done. So what I want to ask is for all of you together with me, will you do everything possible to fight against Donald Trump?
Yeah. Hell yeah!
So let's do it together. Thank you.